In your piece today, you quote a former senior Pentagon official as saying either the president doesn't read the intelligence he's getting or he's BSing. How confident are you that your source isn't just trying to deflect criticism?
I've gotten that from a number of people I've talked to today. I think there's a lot of resentment in the intelligence community right now that in a 60 Minutes interview, President Obama effectively tried to put the blame on the intelligence community when in fact the White House was getting lots of warnings, as Jim just said, in classified materials, but also very out in the open. The annual threats hearing every year, you have all of the leaders of the intelligence community come before Congress. Michael Flynn, the DIA director, couldn't have been clearer. He said that there is a group, he called it Al-Qaeda in Iraq, or ISIL as they changed their name. They intend to try to have a show of strength and try to take more territory. And this was right after you saw these ISIS forces taking Fallujah. So it was pretty high up in the minds of most of the intelligence community. And in that sense, I think many of them today are kind of scratching their heads, a bit flabbergasted at the president's comments.
Is it fair for the president to essentially be throwing James Clapper under the bus here?
Well, the president was quoting Jim Clapper, who said what he said about underestimating ISIS's capacities and overestimating, even more importantly, the Iraqi security forces' ability to rebuff an attack. Look, I think that anytime a president gets up and says there was an intelligence failure, he has to also say that it's his administration. And I think that overall, nobody's doubting the fact that this is his administration, and this underestimating of ISIS and overestimating of Iraqi security forces is on the administration's watch. But I think anybody you talk to who is engaged in training up Iraqi security forces on the U.S. side, and we did that for years and years and years at great expense, believed that they would perform better than they ended up performing. Because there is ambition, which ISIS was making clear they had, but there is ability is another thing. And their ability to move through western Iraq toward Baghdad with utmost ease was amazingly abetted by the fact that the Iraqi security forces basically melted away. And that, I think, raises real questions about not just the political leadership of the al-Maliki government, but about the investment that we made in the United States in Iraqi security forces for years and years.
You know, in many ways, I think the Maliki side of it, which wanted to have a long-term security cooperation agreement with the United States, didn't feel that the offer from the U.S. was terribly serious in terms of the amount of troops that were eventually offered at the end of that, and that he felt that because there wasn't a significant amount of investment that the president and the White House was willing to make in Iraq, he himself felt that it would be better to then sort of break off the relationship and publicly criticize the U.S. for asking for this kind of legal immunity. So there are various different times. And I think the other point here is that the overall policy was to treat Iraq like it was France or any other nation, when before the Obama administration, there was a lot of arm twisting, a lot of kind of putting your arm over the shoulder of Maliki and trying to, in a sense, save him from himself. And I think that in some ways, this White House did not save Maliki from himself. And as a result, a lot of these abuses are there because it took a pretty hands-off approach once it came into power.
Well, I think it's a little easy to imagine that somehow, with dealing with a sovereign government, that the U.S. can have whatever it wants without the agreement of the leadership of that government.
That's a fair point, but
and look, Maliki, the United States gave birth to the system that created Maliki and the Maliki government, and we sustained it in many ways, 2 administrations, and I think there's some amount of regret about that. But in the end, either Iraq is sovereign or it's not. Either we're an occupying force or we're an invited force. And if we're an occupying force, that's a whole different kettle of fish, which I don't think anybody is out there saying they prefer.